Of a strange irony in our line of work, I find. We spend our days working with people to invest in great companies, ones they interact with constantly. Yet those same people seem to recoil every time when they associate with the one phrase, the stock market. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a weekend in my life. It's not extraordinary, unusual, just my family, suburban Massachusetts. But look closely and you'll see how inescapably woven the S&P is into our everyday reality. This weekend, before my son's flag football game, we stopped for gas quickly at the local mobile station. Verizon powers the family text thread that's about who's picking up which kid and where. Prior to that, while backing out of my driveway, I noticed that yet again another Amazon package has arrived, right? There may or may not be an order placed in our household pretty much every single day. After the games, a quick swing by Legacy Place in Dedham, popping into Lululemon. Maybe it's for me, maybe it's not. And then further up Route 1 to Dick's Sporting Goods, where my son Griffin this weekend redeemed a birthday gift card, bought a new catcher's mitt. And while we were there, we just happened to get some sneakers for Nolan as well, a pair of Nikes. You know, another S&P 500 name there, by the way. Floated over to CVS at some point this weekend, picked up some Flonase and Claritin. Spring allergies are running through our house like a freight train. Tessa, of course, begged for McDonald's on the way home. She won, even though she refuses to eat my burgers in the grill. She'll eat McDonald's every day, go figure. All the transactions, by the way, paid with Apple Pay. Throughout the day, I posted, whether it's a cold plunge or burpee video on Instagram, which is owned by Meta. That's one of my versions of accountability. And later in the evening, Danielle and I try to stay awake watching a series on Netflix. Rarely can we stay up much past 9 p.m. Weekend breakfasts, the kids love or they really demand Starbucks. We pay for our upcoming Aruba trip using Venmo to one of the resort owners. That's owned by PayPal, actually. On nights where sports schedules are crazy, it's often Chipotle for dinner, at least for me. My son Griffin has been on a resale spree lately. So he's taking old baseball cards, sports equipment, you name it, and he sells it on eBay. And he ships everything via FedEx. And just this week, I sent out a few books, maybe like some of you, hopefully like some of you, to prospective clients the same way. Now, that's just a few weekend days. And if we zoom out, every one of those companies that I mentioned or referenced, so Amazon, Nike, Apple, PayPal, CVS, Chipotle, Meta, Dick's Sporting Goods, Lululemon, they're all part of the S&P 500. These aren't speculative penny stocks. They're the bedrock of the American economy and they're the background, music, so to speak, of our modern life. And yet, when people hear the term or the phrase, the stock market, their shoulders tense up. And why is that? Because they've been conditioned to see the market as something separate from the companies that they rely on every day, as if the market is some erratic, unpredictable entity that operates in a parallel universe, right? Rather than what it actually is, which is a vehicle for owning the world's most successful enterprises. There is the great disconnect. Because on one side, you have a collection of 500 of the largest, most well managed, soundly financed, innovative companies out there on the planet. These companies are relentlessly focused on serving consumers, expanding their market share, growing earnings, raising dividends, reinvesting for the future, and rewarding shareholders along the way, right? They're not speculating, they're executing. They're not tossing or rolling the die, they're building empires, logistics networks, IP, intellectual property, world class brands. competitive advantages, and compounding value every single day. And you get to be part owner. Our clients get to be part owners. And now contrast that with what we call the market. The market is driven minute by emotion. It's a thermometer, not a compass. It reflects headlines, fear, predictions, algorithms, tweets, half-baked opinions on cable news. It's all there. Noisy, reactive, irrational. And unfortunately, that's where most investors focus their attention. The problem is they look at the price of Apple stock on a down day, for example, and assume the business must be broken. They hear CNBC talking about a looming recession and decide it's time to bail. They conflate volatility of the market with the health of companies. So in the year I was born, 1978, the S&P was at 96, and today it's at 5,600, a 59 times increase. And over that time, we've seen an average drawdown every year of about 14%, 9 or 10 recessions, two separate 50% drawdowns, endless headlines predicting some form of the end of capitalism as we know it. And yet the earnings, dividends, intrinsic value of all these companies continue to grow. And the investors who stayed the course didn't just survive, they won. Because it isn't about price, it's about progress. And that's our job, to help our clients focus on what they own, not what the market is doing, to cut through all the noise and connect with the logic about business. Because these companies are working every single day to earn more, serve more, and create more value. They don't panic, they plan. They allocate capital, they invest in research and development, they open new markets, they hire people, they solve problems. They raise prices without losing customers. They deepen customer loyalty, and ultimately they generate earnings that belong to us, the shareholders. And that perspective we must return to again and again, not once, not occasionally, but constantly, because no matter how rational or intelligent or financially successful someone is, one of our clients, they're human. And they're vulnerable to the same deeply wired instincts that make, well, long-term investing so darn difficult. Fear creeps in, doubt will make a cameo, the market will scream, a neighbor will get out right before the market dips, right? And suddenly the client wonders, hey, maybe I should have done the same thing too. These are not one-time temptations, they're recurring, they're persistent. And without guidance, there can be a fatal or fatality to an otherwise sound financial plan, which is why we continue to have the need to tell this story over and over and over again. Not patronizing, but with clarity and conviction, because our clients forget, not because they're negligent, because they're human. That's what humans do. We react to danger. We respond to noise. We crave certainty. We want to feel like we're in control. But unfortunately, none of those things really pair well with the truth about long-term investing. So we return to our first principles. We reframe, we remind, we re-anchor them to what they actually own. Not a price on a screen, but partial stakes in some of the greatest companies on earth. And one of the very most powerful tools that we have is our version or their version of that weekend audit that we just walked through about my life a few minutes ago. Ask them, what apps did you use today? Where did you shop? What powered your phone? What did your kids watch? What did they eat? What did you wear? Because they're not just consumers of these companies, they're owners. And that's the light bulb moment. That's when they can start to feel it. We remind them that volatility isn't the problem. The markets isn't in chaos, right? It's not through timing, but through time and ownership that we get to where we need to go. Because here's what I believe. we're not investing in chaos. We are investing in capitalism itself, in the creative engine that turns these ideas into industries. These are the companies that turn risk into reward. And in a very real sense, that choice to invest with discipline, to focus on ownership, to tune out the noise, and to keep telling the story, that will end up dictating the financial outcome for the rest of their lives. And that's today's talk. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll talk soon.